we head to Sula, Montana. We camp between Sula and Connor, Montana because of the most recent Bigfoot sighting happened in 2005. I would like to give you a breakdown of the Bigfoot sighting that motivated us to come into the area for a week and take a good look around for Bigfoot activity. Teddy Roosevelt writes about where Bauman and his trapping partner were harassed for several days and what they described many today believe to be a Bigfoot. Back then they called it a wild man. They were warned by Native Americans and early settlers not to go back into the area. They were warned about this wild man, and the description they give to me would be a Bigfoot. The truck driver, William Earl Thornton, and his wife were driving between Sula and Connor, Montana. It was about 7 to 8 p.m. in the evening, clear fall weather in 2005. William writes, I drive truck for a living with my wife. She travels with me. My logbooks will verify place and time. We saw a Bigfoot sprint across the road on Highway 93, approximately between Connor, Montana and Lost Trail Pass, Chief Joseph Pass. I live in Montana, know what a bear looks like, and that a bear cannot stand upright and run like the creature we saw. He passed only 40 feet in front of us. We were heading south. Both of us saw it plain as day. No doubts in our mind, and we saw a Sasquatch. The river was next to the road, and no place to pull the big rig over. Signed, William Earl Thornton. David Petty from the BFRO did the follow-up report. I'll continue to show you the sites around the Bigfoot sighting location as we give the follow-up reports. Mr. Petty writes, I interviewed both Mr. and Mrs. Thornton by telephone, found that their brief but fascinating sighting has had an enduring effect on them, and was able to gather significantly more detail from them. Because they are so frequently on the road and home for just a short stay at any given time, I told them that while searching through their logbooks for a precise date could be a helpful addition to their account, and I did request it. It was not necessary and has not been provided. It must have been early in the fall season because the trees and brush still had their leaves and daylight remained at approximately 7 p.m. Their physical description of the location probably places the location of this sighting between the towns of Connor and Sula. Mr. Thornton saw the figure immediately, 5 to 7 feet off the roadside to the left east, as it came off the mountainside slope and out of the tree brush cover at what he described as a full sprint, and added that a human could not run that fast. He also mentioned a very large swinging motion to its long arms, which were bent at the elbow. Because of the creature's speed, the hair was sticking straight out, flowing behind it, and noticeably from head to heels, but most prominently from behind its arms and elbows, and appeared to be 8 or 9 inches in length in places. The hair color was a uniform reddish brown or mahogany. He also described the figure as obviously much taller than a person, twice the mass of a football player, and probably about 9 feet tall. It was so heavily muscled that it was as if it had no neck, with shoulders going right to the head. It also had somewhat of a conical head profile, almost like that of a gorilla. He could not tell with any certainty if it was male or female, but because no breasts were apparent, it appeared to be so very well built, thought it was probably a male. One other thing observed and described by Mr. Thornton stands out in particular, and struck him as unusual, even in light of the sighting itself. He happened to notice a peculiarity that he referred to as foot rolling. He described the feet landing at the hill and then rolling forward smoothly, like a ball to the toes or front of the feet. It appeared as if the entire foot was flexible and clearly different from a human foot structure and action. The figure crossed the road in just 3 or 4 steps and never turned to look at them. They lost sight of it immediately after it crossed to the right, off the road, and dropped down several feet into the brush alongside the Bitterroot River. The duration of the sighting was no more than just several seconds. Both witnesses emphasized that as residents of Montana, and that Mr. Thornton had even worked at Glacier National Park, where grizzlies are a commonplace, they have seen many bears and are certain this was not a bear. Mr. Thornton said, "No doubt in my mind what I saw. I would never have believed it if I hadn't seen it." Miss Thornton said, "No chance it was a man, no chance it was a bear. It was something I've never seen before." David Petty continues, "I briefly spoke again by phone with Mr. Thornton, who after reviewing the post follow-up report by both he and his wife, confirmed by email that it was a fair and accurate summarization of their observations, and offered the following. Only thing to add is forearms were not proportionate like a human, but longer. Hair flowing noticeably everywhere, back, shoulders, head, arms, elbow, buttocks, legs. Hair was all flowing horizontally from the speed of the creature. Rolling of the foot was described accurately." I would personally like to thank Mr. Thornton for going publicly with his Bigfoot sighting report. These reports are very important to us that chase, study the phenomenon of Bigfoot. I would also like to thank David Petty for following up and getting the additional details from Mr. Thornton. He did a great job. Our team at Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization has been actively traveling to this location once or twice a year since 2011. Our first goal was to find the famous Bauman location. We thought it would be pretty easy to find because a lot of television shows did documentaries, and after getting into it we realized that none of these documentaries had actually visited the location. A lot of television shows, they'll choose a generic location and make their documentary. I don't blame them. It's expensive and it's tough to find some of these places. Teddy Roosevelt writes about it in his book. He gives directions to the area, but it was still a monumental task for us to find. But we found it. Now we continue to come back and study other Bigfoot sighting locations in the area. I'm just intrigued by the long history of Bigfoot sightings in the area. They just add to each other, corroborate each other. You know, you wonder if Bauman, that Teddy Roosevelt writes about, if his trapping partner was really killed by what today we think is a Bigfoot. I mean, what they described was a Bigfoot, and continually in this area around the Bitterroot River, the Bitterroot Forest, the Salmon River, along the border of Idaho and Montana, we still continue to see Bigfoot sightings to this day. Perhaps Bauman's trapping partner was killed by a disgruntled Bigfoot. Most of us believe that they're evasive, gentle giants, but this creature was shot the day before the deadly incident happened. Everything wants to protect itself. Our team has done many expeditions to southwest Montana because of the sighting reports there. What initially sparked my interest personally in that part of Montana, near the Idaho border, was the famous Deadly Bauman Bigfoot encounter Teddy Roosevelt writes about. It took a couple of years of research and visits out there scouting around to find the actual location he wrote about. After finding the location, we like to try and visit it once or twice a year. We also actively search for sighting report locations near the Bauman location so that we can visit them and search for the creature and or evidence. There's only one pass from Idaho to Montana, and if I recall correctly, they cross from Idaho into Montana. The description given of the terrain perfectly fits this area. An even more direct point and scientifically sound account is David Thompson's 1811 account. He was an experienced hunting guide and tracker, and the Indians with him were scared shitless and refused to go any further. He openly stated he'd heard reports of such a creature, but dismissed it as fondness for the marvelous so common to mankind, until he saw 100 yards of fresh tracks. Amazingly, he describes a small nail at the end of each toe. This is really close to the Bauman location, southwest Montana, a historic location that Teddy Roosevelt, our late president, writes about. We've spent a lot of time researching the area, so I got excited when I got this report. Fred Hill writes RMSO. Have you heard of any sightings in southwest Montana in the Big Hole Valley? I was up by Pintler Lake near the Anaconda Wilderness area in an area called Clam Valley this last summer and watched a large upright walking Sasquatch walk up a steep ridge. Just wondering if you have heard of any sightings in that area. RMSO responds, Hi Fred, yes, we have done many Bigfoot expeditions near Big Hole area because of the sighting reports there. We researched recent ones and all the way back to the Deadly Bauman Bigfoot encounter well over 100 years ago. I would like to hear details of your sighting, year, month, time of day, how did it start, how did it end, and best description of the creature you recall, size, weight, color, etc. Excited to hear from you for the very reason we have been studying the surrounding areas of Big Hole for over 10 years now because of the Bigfoot activity there. Fred responds, It was 2019. Me and my dog hiked into Clam Valley. We were going to spend the day and camp over the night. It was about 8:30 a.m. in the morning. We seen a bull elk on the far side of the field and a mule deer doe in the middle by a small stream. It was like the forest got quiet. The elk and deer were both looking in the same direction toward a steep hill. I looked and saw a large kind of black-brown-haired upright walking creature about 6'6", probably 600 pounds, that looked at me and my dog and then turned and started up and over the ridge. There was kind of a pungent kind of smell in the air. The deer and elk did not move until the creature was gone. This happened in late June. It was kind of a surreal experience. Thanks for your time. RMSO responds, Were you able to see the face? Was it human-like or more like another type of primate? Fred responds, Sort of in between a human and a primate. RMSO responds, Thank you, Fred. Dr. Mike Johnson documented Bigfoot tracks in southwest Montana just 5 months after your encounter. It appears to be a very active area, and our organization will keep up the search for this creature in those locations. We Bigfoot expedition to this part of Montana once or twice a year. We were just there this season, and we measured and documented a footprint that was right around 17 inches long with about an 8-inch toe splay near a structure. We were actually hiking around the Bauman area south of where your sighting took place. Jenny spotted a structure, so we went and checked out this structure that just did not seem to have a human use. It was on a slope, so a shelter for primitive camping just did not make sense, and the logs were just massive. Then pointed straight at the structure was a fairly deep Bigfoot track. So that was pretty exciting. It's just a great area. I hope our viewers enjoyed a look at a Bigfoot sighting and evidence found in the same area. Keep on watching. Along the Montana-Idaho border, during our expedition to the famous Deadly Bauman Bigfoot location, we find these deep giant Sasquatch tracks a few feet from a log structure that contained massive logs on a steep mountainside. The track was sunk in a few inches, and its toes drove into the steep mountainside. The track was over 14 inches long and was nearly 8 inches wide at the toe splay. This Bigfoot track was only a few feet away from a massive log structure. It was pointed right towards this structure that appears to be filled with heavy relocated logs. This famous Deadly Bigfoot sighting location brings us to this area often. There's also recent Bigfoot sightings. The most recent Bigfoot sighting was near the Chief Joseph Pass on the Montana side of the border.